This is Adam Kokas, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio.
You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to American Weed Realm Radio. I'm Josh Stanley. I'm your host, and unfortunately this week I'm without my mustache man assistant, my brother Jesse. Jesse's just too busy making oil, and it's a round-the-clock project for us with all of the wonderful, precious patients that the Realm of Caring is taking on. And for those of you that are just tuning in, the Realm of Caring, please join us at Realm of Caring. Like the website. Go to realmofcaring.com. Find out more about what my brothers and I are doing on this 501c3 nonprofit. Get involved, become a part of the Realm. It's really become a part of our lives, and we've been blessed and enhanced for that, to be able to meet such wonderful patients, such wonderful people, and hear these amazing success stories. I'm going to get into a success story here in just a little bit. We have a great show tonight for you. It's going to be a little bit off the wall tonight. We're missing a few people. We're missing the Mustache Man. We're also missing Chris Stubbs for Science Corner. But I have got probably somebody even better. She's a lot better to look at than Chris is.
Oh, that's sweet.
I got Genifer Murray here. And we got some really fun things to talk about. The gloves are going to kind of come off in the first half hour. Jennifer and I are going to talk about some things that we've seen in the industry, some of the travesties that we've seen in the industry when it comes to dosing and lies and things like this. But you know what? Before we go any further, what I would really like to do is I'd like to take a moment of silence. As you know, Colorado has experienced a major tragedy this week in the theater shootings. And this is it's something that Colorado really hasn't coped with since, 1997, I think it was, Columbine,
yeah.
Yeah, and it's such an unfortunate situation. And so before we start the show right now, let's take a moment of silence, and I'd like everyone out there to send your silent thoughts and your prayers and your energy to the victims of this horrible tragedy. Okay. Certainly our prayers go out to all of the victims of this, and you're in our hearts and in our prayers. Later in the show, I have a famous rock and roll photographer, Bob Compton, coming in. And Bob is a real I'm going to call him a trip. He's politically active. His father was one of the big litigators in the South, back during the the civil rights era, I guess it was, and big proponent for civil rights and work with some of the big wigs out there. And so Bob's always been involved in politics. He's a very sprightly character. He can be a little bit crass, so I do want to throw that out there for everybody. So if you have sensitive ears, maybe tune out for that half hour. Okay, I want to thank my guest from last week, Julia Rose, and Peter's story. Peter is an absolute blessing to all of us, and it was a wonderful opportunity to be able to speak with Julia and hear his story. I want to thank Dennis Perrone from last week as well. We'll look forward to having both of you guys back on the show. Okay, getting into Science Corner right now, Jen, we had such a great week when it comes to our children, our DeVay children. And we call them our children, right, because they kind of become affectionately so. We spent, almost 2 years breeding this plant for the purpose of non-psychoactives. So we could, when people said, get rid of medical marijuana, won't somebody think of the children? We could finally say, well, we are thinking of the children. Right. And that's why we have medical marijuana. And so I'm going to read this to you. And folks, I want you to pay close attention. I'm not going to use any names here, but we just took on a new epileptic child in Colorado Springs. Okay, this child is 9 years old, and he and his mom, his mom certainly was very nervous to give this form of treatment a try.
Absolutely.
And all I can call it is courage. But once you've exhausted every other avenue, like Paige Figge and little Charlotte and Nicole and Aiden, what else do you do? You know, I mean, you've tried every pharmaceutical in the book that they can throw at you, and it's like a BB gun at a freight train. And then you find a natural plant substance like this that's high in CBD with no psychoactive effect, and it takes, typically we see in our kids, a 90% reduction.
With no deaths.
With no deaths, absolutely.
And about 4 non-threatening side effects, if you can even call them side effects.
Which would be?
Which would be short-term memory loss, increase of appetite, which won't be huge for them because the cannabinoid THC contributes to that. And then there is some paranoia and anxiety, and that's associated with THC also. And the last one is sleepiness, which
is
most people take it because of that.
That's
that's about it. I mean...
And side effects, those side effects, you know, like we talked about, most of those side effects can be very beneficial. And without the THC, you really don't see that paranoia. With the CBD, you know, they sleep more because they haven't been able to sleep because they're having seizures like this gentleman here we're going to talk about every 2 to 10 minutes. I mean, he's having a seizure. And so this is a really special letter. This caught me off guard last week whenever I read this from this woman in the Springs. And I had to stop, and I had to cry, and I think everybody in my family did too. So I'm going to read. This is the night before the first dose. She says, "I'm starting my boy on his first dose of Realm Oil tonight. Please join me in positive thoughts for him, and that this will be his silver bullet. I'm nervous, excited, a little scared, gripped with anticipation. Thank you, Stanley family and Realm of Caring. I cried when picking it up." And she's apologizing to my sister-in-law, Amanda. Her daughter, her son has subclinical activity about every 10 seconds.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness, when awake. More frequent while asleep. Clinical MYOs like violent full-body shocks about every 2 to 10 minutes while sleeping. Absence almost daily now. Very prone to NCSE. His last bout was the week before last that left him non-responsive, unable to walk, talk, eat, or drink, and relearning the simplest of concepts. Lord, please help my boy, who has seized almost daily for 9 years. Thanks to this community, and whom I know as excited as I am to see the results. Onward. Then she gives her boy the oil, and this is the letter that we get in the morning. This is just a fluke, right? Surely one dose could not have done this already. I laid with him on the floor in our room for the first couple of hours of sleep. He was not restless, and he didn't have any seizures. I went to sleep. Let me say that one more time, all caps. I went to sleep for 5 hours straight. He crawled into bed during the 5 o'clock hour, and I stayed in bed another couple of hours and felt no seizures.
Oh my God.
He slept until 9 a.m. My husband is off today, and he laid with him after I got up and said there was nothing. I'm really trying to beat the optimist down. I throw out the cautious and cautiously optimistic. Every seizure-free moment, I know it may be gone forever. LOL. I've found that way no more disappointing a way to live than waiting for the other shoe to drop. Anyway, I gave him a second dose, which he promptly said he hates. It has a bad taste.
Oh, yeah, it does.
But then he went pee in the toilet and threw away his dry pull-up from overnight. I'm off to enjoy my blissful morning. Thanks for the love. I know only time will tell. I also have to question if this is the big deal everyone was talking about.
That's right.
Sheesh. He wants paper airplanes and chocolate now. So see you later.
Oh my God. Seriously.
This is the big deal.
Yeah.
You know, folks, these are the kids that we want to help so much, Jen. And I've had no less than 15 requests from this amazing new group that Rebecca Brown put together that grows by 5 to 10 people every couple of days.
How many people she has helped just sharing her story is unreal. And Rebecca, thank you. And please, even though we can't get back to you as quickly as I know you'd like, we're still, doing our best, and we do read through these, and that's just fantastic.
Yeah, we do. We do our best to get through them all. There's so many coming in now, and they're coming in from all over the world, like we talked about last week. And the obvious question in a situation like this, Jen, is very easy. How do I get this for my child who's going through the same or similar things that I just read here? And our answer, unfortunately, is you have to be a resident of Colorado.
You're going to have to probably move.
Yep.
But you know what? It could be worse. The state is absolutely fabulous. The people are fabulous. The seasons are. So, sorry if you live in Wyoming, but.
Well, yeah. Well, I think there's only like 350,000 of them. So, I got some call. I'm not going to name the states, but I've got another letter here, and we may have to save that for next week from another parent out of state who's dealing with some very, very violent seizure activity in their daughter. And one thing I want to stress to the parents is this, okay? We can answer as many questions as possible for you, but you have to understand that what I'm seeing is people are seeing the results that we're producing here through this realm oil. And you please understand that this is a very, very special strain of plant. And there are several high CBD strains of plants out there on the earth. But this is one that we give over to Jen at Cann Labs, okay? And they do testing on this and figure out where our ratios are. And so we take very meticulous care to measure the ratios for each particular child. So when we get letters over, and I know what you're trying to do, folks, I really do, because I would probably be doing the same thing for my kid. But just going out and buying marijuana from the street, okay?
Oh yeah.
Even if it's in a medical state, which one of these is, okay? I'd say it's Hawaii, and that's the only place because there's no outlets, there's no dispensaries. Even if there are dispensaries, or if you're buying it from the street, you just don't know what's in that medication.
You don't know, and we're talking about not only being able to dose, okay? But you don't know if there's CBD in there, which is what you're looking for mainly. But also you don't know who's handled it, where it's been growing, if there's, pesticides on it. I mean, all of those things are very, very prevalent. And a lot of a product does still come from Mexico, and as we all know, they don't have rules and regulations. So you really just should not do that. I would do anything possible to get to Colorado, or at least visit and figure out if it's something you want to do. But it sounds to me, Josh, that we have something else that we need to figure out, and that is, how do we put this all together for people that want to do this?
Jen, you're right.
Including a real estate agent or a rental, all of that stuff. And
you're reading my mind.
Yeah. So we need to put together something like that if a family says, listen, here's what we want to come out, then we have a package we can provide for them. Not only which doctor, how to get your card, to where you want to buy your medicine, what type of medicine, and where you want to live, and people that can help out with that. Because I can't imagine, I don't have children myself, but I can't imagine what is possibly going on in these parents' minds, and the last thing they need to do is worry about where should they live or what's appropriate for their family. So and I'm more than willing to figure that out with you, Josh, and figure out how we can put some of that together, because it's going to be a big undertaking, but I feel like there's so many people that are willing to help in Colorado, all over, like outside this industry, inside the industry. So it's just we have to get other people to help us out and do something like that, because buying product off the street, don't do it.
No, folks, don't do it. You heard Jen say it, and it's pesticides, it's mold, it's mildews. Whether it comes from Mexico, whether it's your grower on the corner that's growing the dankest dank or what,
That's right.
What they're growing that for, folks, is the highest THC content that they can get out of it.
That's exactly right.
People don't grow this medicine like we do for low THC and high CBD. Okay, it just isn't done that way. Why? Because you don't have the high. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that whatsoever.
Sure, it's just they're looking for different things when you're buying on the street. Yeah.
You're not going to find it in your hemp seed oils, in the grocery, and we get a lot of questions about that. The main things are ask us, ask me. You have Jen's information on this. It's Pediatric.
Pediatric cannabis.
I can never get it right since it changed.
Oh, I just was on it.
Pediatric.
Chris, help us out.
Yeah. We'll have Chris pull it up.
Pediatric Cannabis Therapy, I believe, is the Facebook group.
Yeah. Pediatric Cannabis Therapy.
Yes.
Please go join the group. Send us messages. Send us your questions. I do everything I can. I know Jen does too, to get on there and to answer your questions, because we would love to steer you away from any of that activity, especially for your children. And I want to expound a little bit on Jen. Thank you for bringing this up. Since we've gotten so much response, and because we've spent the last couple of years trying to develop a strain that has such high CBD, and we're seeing results like I just read, and we have so many people that want to move to Colorado, we'll always be able to, through the realm of caring, treat our cancer patients.
Oh, that's awesome.
With the equal ratios, CBD, THC, we're always going to be experimenting high THC, and we're still going to do the observational research studies with Dr. Shack. Cancer, MS, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, arthritis, the list goes on down the line. But what we're seeing right now, and what I think is a revolution in medical marijuana science, is the treatment of Dravet syndrome and serious other epileptic conditions. And so what Jen just alluded to is something that my brothers and I, and we're forming a bigger group even than just my brothers and I, to help parents relocate. Help bring your kids to Colorado. We have parents coming out, I'm not going to say the state, from another state next week. And they're just going to come out and sniff the air, ask some questions. How do we get residency here? What's the job market like? Where could we live? And we could be able to be in a position to offer those types of resources. Absolutely. But we need help. We need your help. We need more people to get on Realm of Caring site and donate what you can.
Exactly.
All of this, it takes a grandiose effort. I mean, my brothers and I are up generally all night long making oil for these patients, and to do all these other things we think is a daunting task, but we are focusing the realm of caring to these children, and I think that it's very important that we do so. I talked to a woman in New Zealand, considered moving to Colorado. I've spoken with somebody in Switzerland with a Dravet syndrome child, wants to move to Colorado. When it's the only thing that can potentially work for your child, you'll drop anything and do that.
That's right. And I think that by relocating anyway, you're helping the good of everyone as well, because the more people that we have here that are going to take this oil and they're going to journal and document, and through the realm of caring, track all of this stuff, obviously the more information the better. So this helps everyone. This helps every kid, from here on out. So I definitely want to help out with that as much as I can, because I just think we can be very powerful and help that.
I think it's revolutionary. I think that's one of the things that helps change the climate of medical marijuana. For years, and we're going to continue on through our cancer research and studies. For years, cancer's been a mainstay of this. Cancer, severe pain, arthritis is coming on the scene. Certainly MS. We can't wait to see what's going to happen, because my brothers and I have got a very large amount of CBD oil coming, as in the next few months, and we want to broaden that, to all different types of epilepsy. We want to go after MS. We want to really, really get in and test what California has found, that breast cancer in test tubes, CBD is just shown to eat them alive.
Yeah.
Well, nobody's really been able to test it because nobody's had this type of oil before. Nobody's ever bred the high out of the plant, which a lot of the media and Bill Maher the other day, asked Israel to please stop, breeding this plant with no THC.
There'll always be plenty of those genetics, for sure.
Plenty, yeah, and it'll just keep going up. But we're starting to see this with CBD, and I think the realm is going to focus its attention now on these children and on helping these parents on what we can do to get them here and get these kids treated. And that, I think, changes the tide, and it's also a blessing. You've never seen anything like these kids. I mean, it chokes me up. They are I mean, you see Charlotte and Matt and Paige Figgy, they'll send me emails, just short clips of her running around the house with her
Which
twin
she had
sister.
never did before, never could do before. I know. And we're just, like I said, we're just finding out this stuff. I had a conversation with a friend of mine whose brother is taking it. He stutters. And literally, if he can relax, like he gets so crazy because it's actually working. Mm-hmm. So like, if he could just relax and just take it in that it's working, then his stuttering goes away. Like it's amazing.
They did a study on that in Israel.
Did they?
Yeah. On stuttering, what happens is as a child starts to stutter and can't get the words out, it interrupts those synapses in their mind, and so their mind becomes overactive because they're trying to get it out. And once something starts coming in an even flow, that really takes a lot of adjustment for them. And in fact, that study was just done about 6 months ago. I think, in Israel.
I gotta look that up because it all makes sense. I mean, what it does is it calms your system down and it brings it to an equilibrium. Is what it does, basically.
It does. It helps balance you.
It helps balance you. And to address again the hemp oil and stuff is we have to remember that it's the entourage of all the cannabinoids in the plant. So when you're buying hemp oil, it's hemp oil. It's not the same thing, and it's really hard to explain. And if we're able to, I'd like to come up with some an information pamphlet on it or something like that. But it literally is all the cannabinoids, which there are over 100 as we know of right now, that work together with this. So CBD is just, it's been THC for decades, and now we're seeing the big things with CBD, but it's also, CBG, CBC. It just goes on. And the more we can test, research, do all that, the more we're going to find out about the plant.
Absolutely. So let's back up a little bit. We were just talking about, asking parents, please don't go out and buy this on the streets. This is not the same thing that you're getting for your children, no matter how you think that you can turn it into an oil. That is a high THC. Pretty much granted, there's probably going to be some things within that have not been tested by people like you. I want to talk about some firsthand examples of that we've even seen, okay? And this is what we've gone through the last 4 years by creating an industry in Colorado, the medical marijuana industry. We've not been without our puddles that we've stepped in. And some people continue to operate outside of that regulatory realm, which is why you lead and head up the research and development portion for the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division Committee on Research and Development. And they couldn't have picked a better person than you, Jen, to do that. And
appreciate it.
Hold up, just one second. And sorry, we had somebody step in the studio here. So, in putting this research and development group together, tell everybody why that's important.
So it's the Medical Cannabis Testing Coalition, and basically what we're trying to do is establish a laboratory license. So if laboratories do want to test, that they have to abide by, good lab practices, etc., which include the right equipment, calibration, all of that kind of stuff. So we're working on that, and we're working on mainly right away is edibles. There's a huge problem right now with edible companies, and that is that if an edible company does not test, there is no way they would know what active and inactive cannabinoids are in that product. Yes, they can say they put a measured amount in that, but what does that a measured amount mean? If you put a gram of oil, is that a gram of 80% oil, or is that a gram of 40% oil? And does that have any CBD in it? Does it have any THCA? There's a whole bunch that go with that. So we are trying to, we would like to submit a rule for the labeling that says, if you're an edible company and you want to claim active and inactive cannabinoids, then it has to be backed up by an actual test. If you don't want to list the milligrams, that's fine too. But there's going to be no more of this, whatever they want to put on the package.
Well, but either way, even if they don't want to list the active or inactive or the milligrams on that, there should be a disclaimer on there.
Oh, there should.
Because for the consumer, for the true medical consumer, they should look at that and say, hell no, I'm not buying that. I got to know what's going in my system. And that's why to
track it.
That's right. And a good example of this, I got a phone call from 2 dear patients that one told the other they found this CBD syrup, that I thought had already been taken off the market, because we talked about this a month or 2 ago.
Yes.
Not on the show, but in private. And I don't even care anymore. I'm coming out with this. And so whoever makes this here in Colorado, if you're listening to this, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I can't remember that. Was it what was the name of the company?
It's Nancy B's.
I always call it Granny
CBD
B's.
syrup.
Nancy B's CBD syrup. And I got a phone call from these patients, and one of them said, hey, you're not going to believe this. I found a CBD syrup that's largely CBD, and I drank the whole thing. But I don't know that I felt anything, but I certainly didn't feel high. And I told them, I said, well, you didn't feel anything, because not only is there no CBD in that, there's no THC in that either. There's no medicine in it whatsoever.
No.
And whenever Nancy, whoever, was confronted by this, she said, no, there's CBDs in there because I can feel it, man.
Wow. Yeah, I cannot speak to that, but I know for a fact that you can't see, feel, or anything. You have to have hard facts, hard numbers, quantitative measurement on an instrument to tell you that. And, the reason I get so irate about that is because, first of all, when I first went on the CBD group, which is now the Pediatric Cannabis Therapy, they had that on there, and they were all buying it for their kids. So, and that is just astounding to me that there is product still on the market that absolutely has no medicine whatsoever in it. And then to speak to these other edible companies that just put what they think on the package, that is teaching people wrong dosing. I mean, if we're going to call it medicine, if it is medicine, then it should have proper milligrams on it that you can only tell if you test. If you don't test, you can't put milligrams on the packaging. I mean, that's how I feel. Just
like any other ingestible in the world, whether it's medical, whether it's not. You look on the back of a chewing gum wrapper, and you're going to see the high fructose corn syrup. I mean,
right. MSG. How many milligrams of protein do you have, or grams of protein?
How many calories are you intaking? It's the same thing. And so if we want to be taken seriously, I think we've done very well in Colorado, don't get me wrong.
I do too. We're way ahead of,
we are, but
definitely.
Even though where we are now, to see people like this cutting these types of corners is atrocious, and it needs to be stopped. And that's why I'm calling Nancy B out on this show right now. You need to stop what you're doing immediately, because you're not helping anybody. You're hurting the cause, and you're pushing us backwards. Anything? We got to wrap up here. We're going to take a break in just a second. Do you have anything else you want?
No, I just want to just make sure that patients really do their due diligence in where they buy their product. That they are buying edibles that do test, that have the milligrams on the packaging. It's just extremely important. And like I said, if it's medicine, then treat it like medicine.
That's right. If we're going to call it medical marijuana, it's going to have to be medical marijuana.
That's right.
Folks, I want to encourage you to continue to send your questions in. I have a boatload more questions here. We can get to them next week. Maybe Chris will be with us, maybe not, but I enjoyed just our conversation.
Yeah,
and going back
thank you so much. And please email in your questions. And also, you can also go to Cann Labs Facebook. We have Cann Labs Facebook, and we also have Cann Labs Colorado Facebook, and then cannlabs.com.
Yeah, if you don't get your question answered on here, go to Cann Labs Facebook, cannlabs.com, and that's CANNLABS.com. and because we can't get to all these all the time. I always
That's
think
right.
that we can, and
I know.
we get to talking like this. But I want to thank you for your questions. Thank everybody for their support. We're going to be back here in just a few minutes with Bob Compton, the famous rock and roll photographer. And Bob has a lot to say. We're going to get a little bit political here this evening. We haven't really done that yet because this is really all about caring and patience and love. But
unfortunately, it's a necessary evil.
Sometimes you got to get a little bit aggro with the current system that's going on right now. And
Yeah.
Bob is going to help us do that. So it should be real lively. We'll be back here in just a few minutes at American Weed Realm Radio.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
Two of the brothers here from National Geographic's American Weed, and we'd like to invite you to come into our dispensaries in Colorado Springs. Come in for the most pure organic strain selection in Colorado. It's all hand grown by the Stanley brothers, especially for our patients. So come in and visit us at our two locations, East Platte and West Colorado. And remember,
Always be kind to each other.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
California's Attorney General has determined that the Repeal Cannabis Prohibition Act will save hundreds of millions of dollars from our overburdened justice system while creating hundreds of millions in new tax revenues from new sustainable jobs and industries that are friendly to our environment. But we can't do it without your help. We are seeking your donations to get on the ballot. Please go to repealcannabisprohibition.org to learn more about how you can help. It's time to end the war on cannabis and hemp in California. It's time to end the madness. Paid for by Sensible Californians Incorporated.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Hi, Josh Stanley here from National Geographic's American Weed. I'm here with my brothers, and we've just recently put together a foundation in Colorado to allow for cancer patients and other patients of debilitating conditions to be able to get a hold of cannabis-based oil that's just about free of charge. I've just about had it with seeing sick patients suffer needlessly just because they can't afford the proper medication. That's what the Realm of Caring is going to change. Visit therealmofcaring.com. The website will be complete and up on 4/20 of 2012. But until then, please contact any of us Stanley brothers directly through email. You can get us at gratefuljosh@hotmail.com. Now come on, Colorado. We need to take care of each other. Join the Realm. That's realmofcaring.com. Thank you so much.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706. Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. Runongrass.com.
The Clinic is proud to announce the third annual Clinic Charity Classic Golf Tournament benefiting the Colorado MS Society. The tournament will be held at City Park Golf Course this coming August 11th. There will be some incredible prizes, including an opportunity to win a trip for two to Hawaii. The trip includes airfare, 8 days, 7 nights at the Ritz-Carlton Kapalua, including 4 rounds of golf and $1,500 spending cash. Thanks to the incredible support of Weed Maps, Hetty Glass, Rocky Mountain Hydro, T. Meyer & Stitch, Dixie Elixir, and MMJprinting.com, we're able to provide awareness to this incredibly difficult condition that so many Coloradans are suffering from. The event will be covered extensively by our favorite industry media outlets. Culture Magazine, The Hemp Connoisseur, Kush Magazine, and of course the amazing people at iCannabis Radio. Please register at thecliniccolorado.com or at any of our 6 convenient locations throughout the Denver metro area.
Welcome back, American Weed Realm Radio. Josh Stanley here. I'm your host. And I neglected to say at the top of the hour, I promised Julia Rose that I would do this from Peter's story. Here's my shirt here. Here we got petermcwilliams.org, okay, wearing it proudly. My brother Jesse has one as well. We're going to take some pictures. So, Julia, I want to give that shout out. Thanks for everything you're doing. You're a precious spirit, and it was an honor to have you on here last week, honey. I want to introduce a very, very good friend of mine here. The show's going to get a little lively for a little bit now. This is Bob Compton. Bob Compton is a very famous rock and roll photographer and has seen it all, been there, done it all. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Fought my way down I-25, and you said we were going to get aggro. The traffic lit me up pretty good.
It'll do that. Denver traffic is brutal.
It can be ugly. And I love hearing you say famous rock and roll photographer. I just left out the rich part.
Well, yeah. Unless you're Annie Leibovitz.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and you're in the right place at the right time. And I don't think you can. I don't want to say anything against Annie. I love Annie.
Oh, me too.
It's tough for you to sleep your way to the top.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially as old and gray as I'm getting. But, you know, I tell people all the time that making a living gets in the way of living. But not for me.
That's true for you.
Yes.
You're kind of you're a man that doesn't live by society's rules.
No, and the shrinks call that a sociopath. I just call it a guy that says it's bullshit and I'm not going to play your ugly game.
Yeah. You know, and I wouldn't say sociopathic by any stretch.
No.
That you are. I think you're a very, very kind, caring person. And for those of you that don't know, Bob and I met at one of our very, very dear friends' weddings last year. The drummer for the Grateful Dead, Bill Kreutzmann. And
really?
that was a nice, fun family affair. We had a good time together. And every time that we've had since, anytime you've ever come up through here and followed any rock and roll artist and come and stayed with us, or we just had time to sit on the deck and talk, it's always been intriguing. That's why I wanted to have you on the show here tonight. I got asked yesterday to come on and do a live broadcast with the Huffington Post, who's moving into a new live realm. And the topic was, and we don't talk too much politics on here, but we're going to for the next few minutes, was could Obama face losing Colorado because of his medical marijuana principles and practices over the last 4 years. And the thing about it, I didn't really want to take a stance one way or another, but the conversation seemed to go to, instead of, well, we don't know if that could cause him the election, we don't, that's really inconsequential. What the thing that it went to was him versus Romney.
Right.
And one thing I pointed out, and we'll let you go on this in a minute, but one thing I pointed out was on there that every 4 to 8 years, you have a different puppet, okay? But the marionette never changes.
Absolutely. And as you know from some of our conversations, I come from a political background. You hear the Arkansas twang. My old man ran for governor. I was a U.S. Senate page for J. William Fulbright, the great dissenter during the Vietnam War. While I was in Washington as a page, Bill Clinton was an intern on the Foreign Relations Committee staff. And having come from all that political background, I regret to have to state that I have come to believe that we could elect Howdy Doody or the next rockhead that walked down the street, and it just doesn't seem like it makes that much difference. And could Barack Obama lose Colorado? The election? And the first thing you go to there is like, he's running against a clueless zillionaire.
Yeah.
So
with unlimited super PAC potential,
absolutely.
And money behind him.
But I mean, I do a little blog thing, a political blog thing back in Arkansas, and my name or whatever on the blog is the Hopeful Cynic. and I'm bitterly cynical, but I meet so many cool, good, wonderful human beings as I roam the country. And Mahatma Gandhi said one time that good is always somehow just a notch stronger than evil. Excuse me. However, I just don't understand, why this supposed agent of change that all my right-wing friends call a socialist and all this. I say he's got to be the worst socialist ever,
Socialist?
Socialist.
Anything but a
socialist. And, and you said get lively, he's bought and paid for just like the rest of them.
He is.
I swear to God, Josh, I believe that whoever is elected president after all the hoopla of November, from the first week of November until January when they take office, and I think they take the guy that won into this room somewhere, and 5 or 6 guys in dark suits that we never see sit him down and go, okay, pal, congratulations. Here's the deal.
Here's your agenda. Here's your rules.
And here's what you're going to do and ain't going to do.
It changes every 4 to 8 years. The rhetoric changes, but the direction stays the same.
Like you said, the marionette changes. The guy controlling the marionette does not.
And people think, oh, well, we live in this 2-party system. No, you don't. You absolutely do not. If you will stop being spoon-fed and making the decisions between CNN or Fox, it's the biggest trick they ever played on you to say, I'm a liberal and I'm with CNN. Or I'm with Fox and I'm a conservative. It doesn't matter. Start thinking for yourself.
Absolutely. The whole liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican thing is the biggest crock of shit ever. And if you probably read it in high school, if you haven't, get it. And if you have, reread Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
Of course.
I mean, it's all this big, stupid circus that keeps us all yammering at each other while the big money just rolls on.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, I was up in Fort Collins and visiting with some folks, and actually my sister called, and we were talking about race relations and how all that's changed. And we grew up with a maid. My father was a lawyer and all. And then that book, The Help, and but I said, I'm bumping 60. In the town that I grew up in South Arkansas, I can remember, when I was 10, 11, 12 years old, there were white-only signs at the Darriette. There were white-only signs over the drinking fountains in the courthouse.
Wow.
It was apartheid. And we fought
in the United States.
In the United States of America.
45, 50 years ago.
That's what I'm saying. But what it's become now, and the signs aren't posted, but it's there.
Yeah.
Instead of white only, it now says rich only. And I never cease to be amazed by people that I know have gobs of money, and I know they vote Republican, which people with gobs of money should, because but it doesn't make any difference again. But I mean, at least the Republicans are like openly for the rich people. But
except the Tea Party, who are working for the poor, working for the rich.
Well, exactly. Well, of course, for all these years, we've had blue collar people literally waving the flag while they're being sodomized.
No, absolutely.
The working man is just getting, we'll leave it at sodomized, and they're rah.
I think we better.
Yeah, we'd better. But my point being is that you have these people that, they're wealthy and they vote Republican and they smoke dope. Not medical marijuana. No. They smoke dope to get high. That's right. And then they vote for the guys. But when you have the current administration and the Justice Department sending the DEA after dispensaries and all the bullshit they're doing, I mean, it is ludicrous.
Well, and
to a fault. It's frustrating, and if that, you and I have discussed on the deck. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Hey, the Earth tilts. The global warming's not just one thing. There's who killed Kennedy. Doesn't make any difference. But dear God, when something as healthy and good as marijuana is still on the books,
still classified with heroin,
and meth, and it's like.
Cocaine, folks, is a Schedule II because it has some medical benefit.
Right,
it numbs your mouth.
Right. And again, ludicrous just keeps jumping to mind. And again, I'm the hopeful cynic. The cynical side of me says, it ain't gonna change. I mean, come on, this supposed socialist we've got, we're still in Iraq. We're more in Afghanistan. Guantanamo's still open. 4 years ago, his biggest contributor bases were people that sent $15, $20, $25. This time, Wall Street.
It is.
Come
this
on.
time around, the super PACs with Wall Street, based on the Supreme Court decision, that a corporation can give like an individual an unlimited amount.
But I'm going to say is Wall Street firms are supporting this so-called socialism.
It's not socialism.
His Justice Department is going after sick people that need the medicine. And the right wingers always holler, states' rights, states' rights, states' rights. Well, by God, if Colorado says you can have medical marijuana and the DEA comes in here and says federally you can't,
what
you
happened
should
to
be
states?
up in arms. You should be up in arms.
Because we're not the United States of America.
No.
We're the United States. And that's what makes America so beautiful, is it's geographically different.
Diverse.
It's diverse. It's the diversity of our nation that made us so wonderful and so great to visit. And so now we have a situation that the Republicans, even a lot of the Democrats will say states' rights, states' rights, states' rights, unless they find it something to be morally objectionable.
And for someone to say that marijuana is morally objectionable it couldn't be any wronger.
No,
it could not be any wronger. There was a comedian on late night one time. I'm not a television person, but it was on, and this guy, I think, had been a writer for something like King of the Hill or something, and he cracked me up. I'll never forget this. He said, no wonder we're crazy in America because we're fed nothing but bullshit. He said, I'll give you a perfect example. How many times have you heard this? Smoking marijuana leads to the use of harder drugs.
Yeah.
He goes, we all know that's bullshit. Running out of marijuana leads to the use of harder drugs.
Absolutely. That's great. He's absolutely right about that. And along the same lines, I had happened into an article this week, and there's a new form of, I don't know what it is, LSD. It's called 2CB or 2CI or something like that, right? So what happens is they're interviewing a guy in a mask that's a dealer for this 2CI, this new form of LSD, and he says, well, the federal government has now classified 2CI, I think it is, just a few weeks ago as a Schedule 1 substance now. So they put it on the Schedule 1 list, and the interviewer said, how do you feel about that? And he says, I feel great about it because now I can charge triple.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, here's the one thing that I think may make things eventually right. It's all about greed now, especially to the right wingers. The Ayn Rand thing, greed is good, all that bullshit. Revenue, just strictly revenue. We got a big deficit, and everybody's hollering about that. Of course, hey, let's quit doing imperialistic wars. But in the meantime, if we could legalize marijuana and tax it, well, we could drive on streets of gold.
But absolutely, and in Colorado, it changed it overnight, as well as many of these other states. Not only legalize it, but here's the situation we have: we've regulated it through the Colorado Department of Revenue. We put together in statute when we passed these bills the Medical Marijuana Enforcement Division, which is a division of Colorado Department of Revenue.
Right.
So Colorado Department of Revenue makes all of this new tax money, and then the feds say, you know what? You can't bank.
I know.
Yeah. So now what do we do? Okay. So any honest business person, okay, is going to continue to keep their books. But if you don't have a bank keeping your books, and you say, well, guess what, federal government, I just lost 75% of my sales, and you're going to get 75% less of the tax money because I've got a boatload of cash sitting back in my safe like it was 1850,
Yeah.
and now I've got people outside, scoping my place, waiting to rob us, and then when crime goes up, they look at us and say, see, I told you.
Well, it's like a friend of mine back in Arkansas has been a bookie all his life, 50-something years as a bookie. And, it's illegal, and you got to do it on the slide, and they got to have codes on the phone and everything else. But he showed me he's got a thing, the federal government gives him a thing, saying he's a bookie so he could pay taxes
Yes.
on the illegal thing that he's doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
If it wasn't hurting people's lives, not only from a criminal standpoint, some poor guy in Arkansas, Louisiana, wherever, and he gets busted with a joint, jail and trouble and everything else, but then sick people that the medicine is helping, and they come in and say you can't have the medicine, that is a goddamn crime in and of itself. That is what's immoral.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And they come across, okay, for example, in 2009, we get what was called, folks, it's called the Ogden Memorandum. And this came from Eric Holder, and basically what it said is the Obama administration is not going to spend its valuable, or limited rather, resources on attacking medical marijuana centers that are in state compliance, okay? And so a little technical thing. Okay, and so we open up, right? Everybody comes in and they call it the green rush. And then everybody comes in and opens up. And then what do they start doing?
Bang.
Boom, firing you down, right? Against what they said. Now, folks, I want you to understand this. When we, in 2008, when we voted for change, okay? Yeah. Oh, God. Change.
I got you change right here.
Yeah. We voted for change, and under one administration, one Obama administration, 4 years, there were double the raids that there were under George Bush. I think maybe more than double in 8 years, okay? GW, as horrible as that was, didn't really give a damn. He didn't
too
focus
busy
his
doing
resource on
imperialistic
this.
wars for
He's too busy, for Halliburton and bringing getting all the oil barrels, of course. One evil for another. But this is an evil that's attacking our patients, our kids, okay, that we see on this new oil that you know about, this new psychoactive. We have to be careful in everything that we do. And this isn't making these kids high. This is now giving them a
stopping
life.
their epilepsy.
Yeah, right.
And here comes the DEA thugs stomping down doors, everything else. So the little 10-year-old girl that had epilepsy so bad she couldn't go to school, that now can. Oh, well, by God, we're putting a stop to that. And you say marijuana's immoral? It makes me want to scream. As a matter of fact, I think I'm doing a really good job of watching my language.
Yourself. Thank you.
Because you know, on the deck it can get a little rougher.
Since you've sat down in your neck, and you're starting to get flushed. But think about it. The DEA comes to the door of one of these kids' parents, and they say, you cannot use this. This is federally illegal. That's why we have the AMA and the FDA and the DEA. This is the reason you have pharmaceuticals. And then that mother says, you know what? We've gone through every single pharmaceutical, and now her neurologist has said, that's it. We've gone through everything, and the girl has a feeding tube, for crying out loud, and then she finds something that doesn't make her high, brings back her appetite. She's coloring again. She's running around the room. She's playing with her sister, and that is what's wrong. I mean, folks, that's evidence of a very, very, very sick society. A society that builds more prisons than hospitals.
Absolutely. Well, and like I tell people all the time, we live in a society where, more money is spent on balding and erectile dysfunction than there is on cancer research.
Isn't that amazing?
It's all the vanity and the greed. It's sometimes, Josh, I swear to God, I think we deserve it.
Do you really?
Well, I mean, if we're going to be stupid enough to just let it keep going on, every American that believes in things American ought to stand up on this particular issue and go, bullshit. You're not going to do that. You're not going to keep that little girl from the only medicine that makes her well. And you're not going to put innocent people in jail because they had a joint in their ashtray.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it.
And for some people, there are people serving literally a life sentence for that joint in their ashtray.
Absolutely.
And you know why? Because many, and the even the more controlling, it's still coming. The percentage is like 700% of the new prisons that are now being built are privately owned,
and they got to have. That's what I do. And they got to make money, so they got to have prisoners.
But how do they make money? They don't make money on violent offenders.
No.
You can't send them out in the workforce.
No.
So you get the kid with a joint or the woman with a joint, and you put them in the workforce to go make license plates.
The poor kid or the poor woman.
They get 30 cents for their release stipend, an hour. Where depending on where they're at, they're going to make $8.50 to $14 an hour, depending on where they're at in the United States.
Yeah.
That's legalized slavery, Bob.
Absolutely. And Mr. and Mrs. America are sitting there letting it happen. And here is something that is starting to really fascinate me. You and I both know from personal experience, one of the nastiest, dirtiest things that the feds do, I mean, just for me coming and being on your show and running my mouth and saying that I'm morally outraged in public on whatever camera, they'll try something, they'll say, how can we, I'm sorry, fuck with that guy.
you let an F-bomb out.
I'm sorry.
I knew it was going to happen.
But I mean, they only won.
Right. That's fine.
But you see what I'm saying?
No, I see what you're saying. This is what we spend our money on.
They will. The reason Mr. and Ms. America let this bullshit continue is basically because they're afraid. Machiavelli said it best. A frightened populace is an obedient populace. Right. And Mr. and Ms. America, rather than stand up and saying, I want that little girl to have the medicine that works, they sit there in front of their TV and work the job they hate so they can keep the health insurance. And they live little miserable, scared lives trying to stay in the tracks so they don't get in trouble. There's nobody anymore. And if someone has enough of a revolutionary spirit to stand up and go, this is bullshit, well, the next thing you know, guess what? He was a sex offender in 1992,
which is exactly,
or he was this, or he did that.
Exactly what happened to my guest last week, Dennis Perrone. Okay? He's on the fast track, and finally he said, you know what? This is nonsense. Enough is enough. And what did they do? They charge him with, child porn charge. Completely trumped, later completely thrown out. But that's what they do to you in the United States. And, I watched an episode of South Park, and I'm going to get a little crass here, folks, too. I'm sorry. So I watched an episode of South Park, and South Park has got some of the most amazing satire. I love it, and it's in your face satire. And the boys had a choice. They had to choose their mascot, and it was a Democratic vote in their school. And they got to choose, and it was between a turd sandwich and a douchebag. and guys, that's what we have every 4 years until America decides to. They get so comfortable, like you said, in their easy chairs, but they're struggling to keep their mortgage payments done, keep their insurance in.
They're not comfortable in that easy chair. They're hiding.
But they have a false sense of security.
Right.
America has a way to scare its populace so much and to keep them in those nice Gap clothing or the nice, whatever the clothing is, and just enough McDonald's hamburgers to keep them from a revolution. And you know what? People don't change until their feet are held to the fire. That's the unfortunate part of the thing.
Absolutely.
But if I can impart anything to the listeners out there, it is this: you do not live in a two-party system.
You don't.
Get off your couch and stop believing what is being spoon-fed to you on the boob tube.
And read,
do some research, and vote for what's right. Vote for freedom. Vote your conscience. Hell, vote for Mickey Mouse if you have to.
Write him in. Amen.
But don't vote for a turd or a douchebag. And now we've gotten to the point, and I'm sorry for any of you, anybody, that's super religious or Mormon out there. I apologize for this statement. But I can't, for me, it baffles me that we're in the year 2012 and we may be electing the leader of the free world who wears magic underwear and believes Jesus partied with the Indians?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
Folks,
come on.
It's time to change, and only you can change it. Only we can change it. So the buck stops at us.
Absolutely.
And we got angry, we got excited, and it kind of felt good to do that because usually we're just always medical and always positive. And I'm not being negative. I'm trying to be positive. I'm telling you, get out there, use your head, folks. Make a stand, okay? A revolution doesn't happen in your armchair.
No, and let's go back to whenever it was. Peter Finch in the great movie Network. Open your window and scream, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore." Of course, you remember what they did to him.
Of course, absolutely. But folks, it's time. It's time to open your window and say I'm mad as hell. Yeah, you have to, guys. I mean, how much more of this baloney can we stand? It's not just like we're talking here. It's not just medical marijuana policy. It's just about covers any corner of the room in lunacy and what we consider to be our rights. Yeah. So if you want your rights, you don't have to go fight and overthrow a government. You have to vote.
And this is one place where liberals, conservatives, Democrats, Republicans could stand together.
Oh,
and
medical marijuana, absolutely.
Dude, my God, I don't care if you for Romney or Obama or whatever else. Nobody is going to stand there and say, "I don't want that little girl to have the only medicine that works."
That's absolutely right. And with that, we're going to take our break here and say goodbye to Bob. Bob, will you come on the show again?
Yes, I will.
Let's liven it up again sometime here real soon.
You say when.
You got it, buddy. We'll be back here in just a few minutes on American Weed Realm Radio. Thanks for listening.
If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
The clinic is proud to announce the third annual Clinic Charity Classic Golf Tournament benefiting the Colorado MS Society. The tournament will be held at City Park Golf Course this coming August 11th. There will be some incredible prizes, including an opportunity to win a trip for two to Hawaii. The trip includes airfare, 8 days, 7 nights at the Ritz-Carlton Kapalua, including 4 rounds of golf and $1,500 spending cash. Thanks to the incredible support of Weed Maps, Hetty Glass, Rocky Mountain Hydro, T. Meyer & Stitch, Dixie Elixir, and MMJPrinting.com, we're able to provide awareness to this incredibly difficult condition that so many Coloradans are suffering from. The event will be covered extensively by our favorite industry media outlets, Culture Magazine, The Hemp Connoisseur, Kush Magazine, and of course the amazing people at iCannabis Radio. Please register at thecliniccolorado.com or at any of our 6 convenient locations throughout the Denver metro area.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it on grass. Runongrass.com.
Hi, Josh Stanley here from National Geographic's American Weed. I'm here with my brothers, and we've just recently put together a foundation in Colorado to allow for cancer patients and other patients of debilitating conditions to be able to get a hold of cannabis-based oil that's just about free of charge. I've just about had it with seeing sick patients suffer needlessly just because they can't afford the proper medication. That's what the Realm of Caring is going to change. Visit therealmofcaring.com. The website will be complete and up on 4/20 of 2012. But until then, please contact any of us Stanley brothers directly through email. You can get us at gratefuljosh@hotmail.com. Now come on, Colorado. We need to take care of each other. Join the Realm. That's realmofcaring.com. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
Two of the brothers here from National Geographic's American Weed, and we'd like to invite you to come into our dispensaries in Colorado Springs. Come in for the most pure organic strain selection in Colorado. It's all hand-grown by the Stanley brothers, especially for our patients. So come in and visit us at our two locations, East Platte and West Colorado. And remember,
always be kind to each other.
Welcome back, American Realm Radio. I'm Josh Stanley. What's that? I'm Josh Stanley. I'm your host here at American Weed Realm Radio. And we're back here with a very good friend of mine, Dr. Alan Shackelford, and we're happy to have you back here for the session we call Ask Dr. Shack. Welcome
Thanks.
back.
It's a pleasure to be here, Josh. Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, and I know our fans certainly appreciate it as well. There's a few of them went a little bit crazy when you weren't here last week. We got some emails. Is he coming back? Well, so yeah, it's good to have you here.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Well, there's a few things I want to go over with you tonight. I want to get your perspective on, because us in the medical marijuana industry, whether we're dispensary owners or we run the Realm of Caring and we're constantly dealing with these patients, people tend to get a little bit excited, right? And they tend to get ahead of themselves in a lot of aspects. And you're the one that actually brings it down and says, hey, we know this is helping. We don't know why. We want to know why, which is why we get into the observational research end of things. So I always call you kind of the realist, if you will. And it's always great to hear you go to a rally and speak, and you demand everybody's attention, but you bring them from angry down to, and you get people thinking. And I've always appreciated that about you.
Well, it's kind. Thank you. One of the things that I think is important to note there is that what we must do is base our actions and recommendations and our approach as much as possible on what we know, not so much what we would like to be the case or what we think is the case, but which is not to say that that experience is not important, because in many respects we don't have any scientific data on a lot of the observed effects of cannabis in a variety of different conditions. So that's where observation of effect in given medical conditions can be extraordinarily important, even though it may not necessarily be based on the gold standard medical research that we'd all like to have. Nonetheless, the observational aspect of study is a very old and well-regarded form of research, in part because sometimes in the past, certainly, and even today, as we know from cannabis, it's difficult to carry out the kinds of actual types of studies that we really want.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Observational research studies, folks, as opposed to what the FDA would require, which is what's called typically a double-blind placebo study. Observational research studies have been going on For thousands of years, literally. I mean, how else did we know the efficacy of any herb, of any plant, as we've progressed through human history? And right now, observational research studies really, they fall in the line of the, I guess I would say, the dietary or nutritional supplement realm, and kind of out of the purview of the FDA. And that's really where medical marijuana falls right now in that category, I think, because it's not recognized by the FDA. Would you consider that to be fair?
I think that's a fair assessment, though, of course, we're really talking about FDA as if FDA is the arbiter for research that is conducted in other countries. FDA, DEA, and the National Institute on Drug Abuse, NIDA, control the clinical studies that are done in the United States, but aside from financing, and I think that's an important note here, because NIDA does finance studies done in other countries, but apart from financing, their regulatory authority really ends at the United States borders. So researchers in other countries are governed by the laws in those particular countries, and they aren't necessarily the same sorts of laws or regulations that we have in the United States. So to a degree, when we talk about FDA regulation or NIDA or DEA, we're really talking about the United States. So I think it's important to make that distinction. But yes, I agree that's correct.
Let's talk about observational research studies as opposed to double-blind placebo. What is your opinion? Is there one more effective than the other typically?
Well, double-blind placebo-controlled trials typically isolate variables, because you really want to know what effect what you're studying has, and you try, as we've spoken about before, to limit the influences on that particular patient group or subject group or animal group, for that matter, to the particular substance that you're looking at. So the typical double-blinded placebo-controlled trial means nobody knows what actual substance is being studied. And you know, the Israelis recently developed a THC-less strain of cannabis. The
same one that we developed.
Well, yes, right, and they've that was trumpeted throughout the news world, and that would function as a placebo if you're just looking at THC effect.
I see.
So you've isolated a variable there. Now, observational studies differ in that you're just simply observing what happens in a given environment and what people typically, or animals typically, will do. The double-blinded placebo-controlled trial means that you're actually administering something, and nobody, neither the subjects nor the researchers, know exactly what it is that you're administering. Now, there are variations on that particular theme. There can be studies that are where there's a crossover, so that the people who got substance A now get substance B, and you can observe effect that way. There are also other trials where they're not blinded, or where there are clinical trials that aren't placebo-controlled, so that you can actually look at the active substance without comparing it necessarily to a non-active substance. You can, say, compare it, for example, to standard treatment for something, where the person or the subject is given or takes the pharmaceutical that is typically given for that particular problem. So there are a lot of different variations on that particular study form, but the key element here is that the subject is provided with the substance that's to be studied, or it's either control, it's placebo, or some other substance. Now, in the observational study, you're really just kind of sitting back and watching what happens, and you can choose the parameters of effect that you want to look at. You can look at nausea, for example, in patients using cannabis versus patients who don't. You're not giving anyone anything. You're simply observing what happens when someone uses traditional pharmaceutical therapies versus something else, in this instance, cannabis. There are lots of different variables that you can keep track of. The difference is that you don't really influence the study or the use of a particular substance by directing a person in one way or another.
Okay. with ending on that, this leads into a logical question here, and I hope it's not a loaded question for you, but with the influence on the outcome that you get from an observational research study, as the older that a subject is, or the more cognizant that a subject is, the more I would feel that you're going to have more of an outcome based in that individual's mind, because they know what it is that they're taking. So let's bring this back and let's talk about some of these children on the non-psychoactive CBD type oil on Dravet syndrome. To me, an observational research study like this really doesn't hold those expectancy results that somebody may have, because they really don't know what they're taking. They're too young to understand what it is that they're taking.
Well, maybe and maybe not. And I think that's sort of an assumption, but remember that there are, I would agree that's most likely the case, and I think in this instance that probably is true. However, expectations or meeting expectations can play a role in human interaction, no matter what the age of the subject. So that's where a placebo can actually be useful, and we have a term for that. It's placebo effect, which basically says that a placebo can have therapeutic value. There's a whole area of medicine called behavioral medicine that looks at the mind-body interaction, and another term for that is mind-body medicine. There is no question that belief influences physiologic function. You see that in as simple a setting as students who function at a high stress level perfectly well, and then when the stress is gone suddenly get sick. Because there is an alteration in immune function based on stress. There's no question that those things happen. It's been studied extensively. Groups at Harvard and Ohio State and Stanford and Yale and universities all around the world actually have looked at this and have found that belief does influence outcome. So the question, of course, for children is how to what extent is that in play? And fulfilling a parent's expectations, for example, could influence an outcome.
I see what you're saying. It's kind of the same thing in simpler terms, that we create our own reality. And it may not be so far off to say that even a parent's reality, who's to say whose reality is who, right? So a parent's reality could influence an outcome.
It could influence an outcome. I think, though, the question is, what are we observing? If it's a subjective report, pain, for example, or something, or even nausea, I think that's more likely to be the case. But with something as dramatic and as goodness, it's hard to come up with the actual adjective, but something like seizure activity, that's very unlikely, in my opinion anyway, to be influenceable simply by belief, because it's a cascade of electrical activity, and it's observable, it's traceable. It's not subjective.
It's objective.
Indeed, it is objective, right. More so than some of these other things.
Right. Well, and in the instance of pain, since you just brought that up, I'm sure you've seen this, but this is research backs up claims of medical marijuana benefits. Just very recently, the University of California medical researchers slipped an ingredient in chili peppers beneath the skin of marijuana smokers to see if marijuana could relieve acute pain. The result was it could at certain doses. They monitored patients with AIDS and HIV, and they smoked joints or placebos to determine whether marijuana could quell agonizing pain from nerve damage, and it provided relief. They tested a volcano vaporizer to see whether inhaling smokeless pot delivered healthier low-tar cannabis. It did. There was $8.7 million that was put into different studies like this in California. All of these continue to come back with positive results, but we're talking about something that is kind of open-ended. Pain, again, for example. Who's to say what degree of pain it is that somebody's going through? But when we come back against something that I think is more measurable and verifiable, like seizures, it's hard to argue that.
It is. However, it's important also to note that some of these studies that measure pain have been are based on some extremely well verified and substantiated, I won't say assumptions, but precursor type information, and it's very likely to be less subject to sort of the whim of individual assessment, and typically pain studies are much more objective than simply somebody saying it hurts or it doesn't. And so I haven't read those specific studies. I don't know exactly what their methodology was, but there are some very exquisite and refined and actually elegant ways of isolating the sort of more subjective report of pain and being able to have a more objective measure of pain than simply somebody saying it hurts or doesn't, and that's one of the goals. But pain still is ultimately subjective. It's quite right.
Agreed, and that's what has been fairly hard for us in Colorado, because what's at the very beginning of our the reasons that somebody can get a medical marijuana card is severe pain. And that's something that's been awful hard to convince senators, of course, and congressmen of in order to get these bills passed. Well, they say, what is pain?
Well, stop and think for a second about the and I don't have all the numbers to back this up, but this is in part observational information. People often will use or try medical marijuana when everything else has failed, or and that's not uncommon in severe pain.
It's usually their last stop.
Exactly.
If they're serious about medical marijuana.
Well, if they're serious about treating their pain.
Sure.
And so quite frequently, the high number, 94 or some odd percent of Colorado medical marijuana patients listing pain is not, as I've said previously, not so surprising if you stop and look at the prevalence of pain across adult populations. And that, I think, is extremely important. It's fascinating to look at the research on this and the numbers of people. More than 60% of adult Americans report recurrent or chronic pain. That's a significant number. That's in the neighborhood of 200 million people. Now, the fact is that the majority of those people respond well to conventional treatments, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications, opiates, whatever the particular treatment might be. But there is a distinctly a distinct subgroup of patients who may or may not respond or may no longer respond to those treatments. And I think that because of, and potentially also because of publicity around the use of marijuana to treat pain, people whose traditional pharmaceutical treatments are no longer effective may use marijuana as a last resort. Now, and we can talk a lot more about that particular subset.
I want to talk about this more next week, too. I want to really talk about this topic because you see people and you kind of go with the logic of what the actual numbers are, of the people that you realize, the people that really want to treat their pain or treat their illness, right? You're able to see that on a weekly basis. And many of these people, this is the last bump in the road. This is the last stop. You know, they've tried every other pharmaceutical treatment, and it's either failed them or they've built up tolerance or they've built an addiction, whatever the case may be, but this is their last stop. And usually, and folks, this is important to note here because this is not, the medical marijuana community here is not all about just kids out saying, I stubbed my toe, give me my card, ha ha ha, now I can get high. And I think it's important to note that because you actually see these people, some of the people that are referred to the realm of caring for the oil, for example, people that would have never thought they would have used medical marijuana. I mean, and especially in a capacity where you don't have to smoke it, you don't have to vaporize it, you're not eating it in a brownie, but you're taking it in a pill form.
That's true. And the thing that, you know, if you look at all the different indications, and these are, of course, cancer, HIV infection or AIDS, glaucoma, extreme weight loss, severe pain, severe nausea, seizures, and persistent muscle spasms, and look at the prevalence of those particular conditions in the general population, pain is the most prevalent of those particular indications. Now, estimates are 1% to 3% of the population of this country and probably worldwide have a seizure disorder. That's a very small number of people. For example, that the same is true of HIV infection. Now, the infection rate in the United States continues to be around 50,000 new HIV infection cases a year. out of a population of 320 million, that's not a huge number. So, and the same is true for some of these other indications, such as glaucoma or cachexia. Cachexia is rare, actually, except within a given subgroup of patients, and those may be cancer patients, HIV patients. You could actually classify cachexia as a manifestation of an eating disorder as well. And the definition of cachexia is fairly flexible. It's between 10 and 20% of body weight lost in a given period of time without any being in a particular diet program or something like that. So if you look at the prevalence of these things, pain is the most prevalent within the society in general, and I think is reflected by the numbers of patients using cannabis in Colorado, and probably nationwide as well.
Excellent. Duck, going to have you on next week, correct?
Yes, indeed.
Great. I've got a lot of questions. We just can't get to them all. I'm going to have even more next week. We're going to start wrapping up here, but I want to thank you so much. Your knowledge, your expertise, and experience is so appreciated by me, and I know it's appreciated by all of the people listening out there. So I want to thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And Kim and Bart, you asked two very good questions, and I told you I'd get to them tonight. We did not get to them tonight. We're going to bring these up with Dr. Shackelford next week. I promise. You're going to be at the first. There's some very good questions here, but it's going to take some time to answer those. We're gonna leave you tonight, and I want to leave you guys with a quote from Peter McWilliams. His quotes, they just hit you in the heart. And Julie Rose was a guest last week, and I've had the opportunity to read some of his books this week, and this man was just an amazing patriot, an amazing person. Peter says, and this is Peter's quote: "Within me you inspire desire, contemplation, and creation. Is this because I love you, or do I love you because of this?" So, that's something that I love that quote. It nailed me. And if you have the opportunity, go to petermcwilliams.org and check out that organization. In the meantime, visit realmofcaring.com. Become involved. We need your help, guys. And as always, remember, it only takes one lighthouse to bring in 1,000 ships.